Good afternoon, welcome to the UK Column News. Am I allowed to say that?
In an untelevision-like way.
It's the 2nd of July 2014 and it's just gone 1 o'clock. Myself, Louise Collins, Brian Gerrish and Mike Robinson are here in Plymouth and we have a guest in the studio with us today again.
Which is good.
Yes. Over to you.
Well, outside it's blue sky, hot and sunny. I think that's generally the picture across the country. Some chem clouds, it says, in the southeast on the chat box. So we've noticed a little bit of that ourselves, but at the moment we're just going to enjoy the sun that is getting through the haze, as it were. Well, we'd like to start by saying thank you very, very much to this man, Harry Beckhoff, who recently celebrated his 100th birthday. Harry Beckhoff is still campaigning. He sent a little email through to Carol this morning because unfortunately he'd had a fall, two bad falls, but he says the voice of the people will eventually be heard, though maybe not in his lifetime, but keep our newspaper alive and continuing whatever they throw at you. Who else can we really rely on? Love to you all, Harry the centenarian. So, Harry, we'd like to say to you, thank you very, very much for all the support you've given us over the years. And if there's anybody thinking to themselves, what can we really do? Here is Harry at over 100 years old, still fighting, still putting out material and still exposing what is really going on. So that is the shining example to us all. We'd also like to say thank you very much to Fair Dinkum Radio. Mike said I had to do that in a very untelevision-like English voice. But we did an interview with Leon this morning and we hope to produce further link-ups with Australia. Very, very interesting to hear, of course, that many of the things we're seeing in UK are being mirrored down under. So if you haven't come across that website before, you might like to just go and have a look. Well, nothing more important than money. If we've got it, we can do things. If we haven't got it, apparently we can't do things. Over to you, Mike.
Well, this is the Daily Mail saying that householders face higher bills to cover the $250 billion cost of upgrading the UK's crumbling roads. Most of the costs, they say, are to be passed to consumers with higher bills. So what has happened here? Basically, successive British, they're hardly successful, for goodness sake, successive British governments have sold the rights to charge for the use of our infrastructure to private corporations like British Gas and other organisations. But of course, none of those corporations are required to invest other than in the most basic way in the upkeep and upgrades of our infrastructure. And so the government, the taxpayer, is paying for that instead, £375 billion planned over the next 15 years. But strangely enough, that's going to put bills up. I'm not really clear how that works. But of course, it isn't going to put our tax bills up. It's going to put the use of the infrastructure bills up. Somebody can maybe explain that to me when the companies aren't actually investing any of this money. But of course, the main point here is this is all completely unnecessary. The Bradbury Pound should be brought back. Anybody that is not yet aware of what the Bradbury Pound is, please go to the UK Column website and have a look and watch the little video, which is a very untelevision-like description of what the Bradbury was and where it came from and what its purpose was during the First World War, just prior to the First World War. Now, I have no issue with private corporations being hired on a contractual basis to manage infrastructure on a day-to-day basis, but they should not be given free rein to charge whatever they like for that. If it's done on a contractual basis, then of course within the terms of that contract you would have penalty clauses for if they're not meeting their obligations. At the end of the day, national infrastructure is a national security issue. Energy, transport, food production, healthcare, the military. None of these should never have been simply handed over to corporates who don't have the national interest or the interests of those who live in this nation at heart. So let's redouble our efforts to get behind the Bradbury Pound campaign and force our so-called elected representatives to really implement this policy, kick out the central bankers and kick out the corporations from ownership of our lives, really.
Mike, can I just...
You got caught on camera. She put her hand up.
Martin's asking in the chat room, what does the fuel duty pay for then?
Fuel duty?
Yeah. What does it pay for?
Pays for interest on debt.
Okay, thank you.
Tax essentially is paying for interest on debt and paying for the running of big government. We can halve the size of the government or decimate it, perhaps is the right word, okay. And maybe we'd end up with a much more efficient country as a result.
Okay.
We just say that Kate in the chat room has also said, remember, of course, that the agency for roads for the whole of the EU is actually based in France.
Yeah.
So if we've lost control of our roads, don't be surprised at those potholes appearing, but at least we can measure them in metres and centimetres, I suppose.
But we don't need to worry because we're getting smart roads.
Under Rothschild?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, if we're going to get the Bradbury pound reinstated, obviously we need to get it into the media. This is very difficult because we've got people like ATVOD. So here he is once again, the chief executive of ATVOD, smiling from ear to ear as anybody would on a salary of £102,000 per year. So we thought we'd just show you some of the material now coming out of ATVOD to justify what they've been doing. So thank you very much for the viewer who sent this one in. So here we are from complaints@atvod.co.uk. Subject is the UK column. Thank you for contacting ATVOD regarding the UK column. The Authority for Television on Demand, ATVOD, is co-regulator for the editorial content of certain UK video on demand services. Our website contains further information on the types of service that are regulated and the rules with which regulated services must comply. ATVOD received a complaint about the UK column website in January 2014 and proceeded to investigate the service. This investigation resulted in a decision that the service was, where are we? We should come up here. I might have missed a bit out. 3 lines down, thank you. I've just lost my... here we are, on-demand programme service, requiring notification to ATVOD. For the full reasoning behind this decision, please see the published determination, which anybody can now see because they've kindly put it up on their website. Please note that during this process, the service provider was invited to make written representations to ATVOD and did not do so. After receiving the determination, the service provider was given the opportunity to appeal against the decision to Ofcom, but did not do so. As no appeal was made and no notification received, ATVOD issued an enforcement notification requiring the service provider to notify the service and pay the associated regulatory fee. Please also note that at no point was the provider instructed to remove the service or any of its videos from YouTube. We would advise you to contact the UK column directly for information on why the service has ceased to operate. So there we are. ATVOD, of course, have acted totally reasonably, and they are completely puzzled as to why we would have taken steps to remove material. Well, let's have a look at this in a slightly different way.
Mike's got his hand
just
up.
Before you do that, can I just address one issue here, Brian?
Of course.
And that is the issue of the fact that we did not send them written representations. Am I preempting something here?
If you just cover it briefly, because I think your comments are going to be more effective when we just do the next one.
Right, okay. Well, basically, it was as a result of multiple telephone conversations with ATVOD where it was clear that there would be no benefit to making those representations, right? So there was no clear avenue for us to go down which would have prevented regulation, and so there was no representation made. But that was following many no formal representation, that is following many informal telephone representations and basically getting a negative response in every case. Yeah,
and a very important point. So if we just follow things through a little bit differently, our experience of ATVOD from the outset is that they threaten, intimidate and bully people. So let's bring in the first letter. Obviously, Mike, if you want to comment on this, you are the ideal person. But essentially, here we've got the first letter which says, we've had a complaint and we think you've broken Rule 1, Rule 4 Rule 11, so the requirement to notify an on-demand programme service, requirement to pay a fee, and the requirement to ensure that children will not normally see or hear material which could damage their development. So we start off with a letter which is clearly threatening as a result of an unknown complaint, and technically we still don't know who has made that complaint, but we may have some more information on that. So let's put that letter to one side, and then what happened was, of course, a second threatening letter, a notice of determination. They've now had a secret meeting, and the good news is we've only broken 2 rules. Rule 1, requirement to notify an on-demand programme service, and Rule 4, the requirement to pay a fee. Luckily, the UK column has not been harming the development of children, nor have we been showing any extreme pornography of the sort usually passed by the British Board of Film Censors. So we'll park the second letter, and what then happens, of course, is the final and massively threatening letter, and here we've got it. So this one is actually telling us that now they've produced an enforcement notice, and I think I'm correct in saying, Mike, that we had 10 days to deal with that.
Yeah, 10 working days, yes.
Okay. So if you deal with ATVOD, what are you going to get? You're going to get threatening letters, and if you just bring that one off screen for a moment, Mike, that would be helpful. Essentially, you're going to get threatening letters. We'll show you that in a bit more detail. You should be able to read some of that on screen now. Here we are. As the appropriate regulatory authority issued you with its determination, well, you can go through that lot, but it basically says we're now going to make you do it. And of course, how can they actually make you do it? Well, they can issue a £250,000 fine. But we're nice people. We're able to discuss things as long as you join our club, and we can regulate you. We're not actually going to fine you. So this is the true position that ATVOD started out, of course, on its website, threatening anybody with a £250,000 fine, in this case the UK column, if we don't allow them to regulate, but now says that the UK column was given a free choice in the decision, a decision, of course, taken behind closed doors with no set rules. Don't know whether you'd like to add anything to that, Mike?
Yeah, I just say that indeed there was no free choice. That was made clear during the telephone conversations. Now, I understand that some other people have had subsequent conversations with ATVOD, and perhaps the language that they're using has been softened somewhat in the last few days. Whether that hardens up again at a later date remains to be seen. But the fact of the matter is there was no free choice. They were telling us what was going to happen. And while we could make determinations and appeals, of course, that simply draws us further and further into their world. And that was not something we were intending to do, particularly not after the things that were understood following the telephone conversations.
Yeah.
So please don't assume that we simply ignored these people. We did not. We did everything that we could to understand exactly what service they wanted us to perform, and basically we came to the considered decision that was not somewhere we wanted to go.
Yeah. So do have a look at the ATVOD website if you haven't been there, and have a look at their business plans, their corporate development plans. Of course, the basis of this is the more people they can draw into the spider's web, the more people they can fine, the more money they can make, the more they can pay themselves. But it's been interesting to see people thinking about what's going on here. So Tim kindly sent us an email. Hi, Brian folks. It looks clear to me that ATVOD are overstepping their remit and it shouldn't apply to you. And obviously he highlights the guidance notes there to provide regulatory protection in circumstances where the parallel with television is such that audiences would reasonably expect it. And then he says, can ATVOD really claim that the audience would expect a YouTube channel like yours to be regulated like TV? Can they really claim they are parallel? I think you could argue the audience comes specifically because it's not. UK columns not regulated. The directive and Part 4A of the Act are therefore intended to cover on-demand and broadcast television audio-visual media services which compete for the same audiences. Services which compete for the same audiences, name one TV programme which is in competition with the UK column. I can't. Well, thanks, thanks, Tim, because we understand where you're going with that one, but this is our response. And the key bit is to realise that ATVOD are a law unto themselves. So we said back to Tim, your analysis appears correct to us, but you've missed a key point. It does not matter what ATVOD guidance files state, because ATVOD themselves state that their regulation is an evolving art, and they simply make up the rules as they go along. That being the case, there's no counter to ATVOD at law, because they make the laws, and by consenting to this, the British public is giving consent to them making the law behind closed doors. So the legal beagles out there can have a think about that. Our decision was to sidestep these people. In our view, we do not consent to what they're doing. I think many people would look at what they're doing and saying it's fraudulent. You can't make the law up in this country unless you're David Cameron and the government, of course. So what's going on? Well, this is another one, a letter that's been pushed through about ATVOD. Dear Sir or Madam, I'm absolutely incensed to find that all YouTube posts by UK column have been taken down and their daily contributions have ceased in the excellent amateur format that they had adopted. It appears that they have felt a need to do this because of ultimatums issued to them by ATVOD. To put it into layman's terms, the choice they've been given is to pay to be regulated or face a fine that would obviously financially ruin their small team of volunteers. Totally on the point. I believe that they've been accused of producing on-demand and television-like YouTube posts. This is quite ridiculous, as the term on-demand is interpreted and defined by most as being synonymous with paying to view. As I said, UK column is entirely voluntary and completely non-profit making. Also, they have no interest, influence or funding from any government or corporate structure. Hence, it's completely unreasonable that they should be liable for any charge. He goes on to talk about common sense, and basically we'll give you the final paragraph. Regrettably, unless common sense prevails on this matter, I feel it's my moral duty to do all I can to protest, as the already limited freedoms of everyone seem to be under threat. I hope you will consider the issues raised in my complaint and re-evaluate your position. So, excellent. Thank you very much. I think this is from Sean. Thank you for what you're doing. This is what is needed for the wider British public to now start taking on the tin pot dictatorship, which is ATVOD. We say, if you're of a weak disposition, please turn away. And here she is, Ruth Evans, the chairman of ATVOD. And we just want to make entirely clear to people that when we said this organisation makes up the rules, here is one example of actual proof. This is media convergence and its public policy impact. Committee meeting took place in the House of Lords Tuesday, the 5th of February 2013. And let's get into the meat of it. This is the key bit here. It says that you have trouble with defining the services, and Ruth Evans says, yes, it is an evolving art. So here we have a private company imposing fines on individuals, and what are they using? An evolving art, presumably the dark arts. And on the subject of that, I think it's over to very dirty, devious dealings in Westminster.
Indeed. Okay, Simon Danczak has called on Leon Brittan to make public about what he knew about the Westminster paedophile ring. According to Danczak, a dossier was handed to Leon Brittan whilst he was Home Secretary back in the 80s. Cyril Smith's crimes were hushed up because, according to Danczak, he was part of a network of people protecting each other. The police have also confirmed Smith was a visitor at Elm Guest House, and victims have confirmed other high-profile establishment figures attended the South London Guest House. apparently Conservative MP Geoffrey Dickens gave Britain a dossier of allegations, but this has never seen the light of day.
So we've got these two interesting headlines, haven't we, Louise, from the BBC here. So we've got Leon Brittan urged to comment on the 1980s paedophile dossier. And then this one here, we just highlight that. That
story here, it's just broken this morning. Leon Brittan actually responded to Simon Danczak's call for him to make public what he knows. Brittan has said that he asked his officials to look carefully at the dossier and to report back to him if action needed to be taken. But apparently Mr Brittan doesn't recall being contacted again on this matter. And the statement that was released this morning said, Brittan said, as I recall, he came to my room, that's speaking about Mr. What's his name? Where is it? Who handed it?
Don't worry.
No, him. Yeah, the guy who handed him the dossier apparently came into my room at the Home Office with a substantial bundle of paper, and he said, as is normal practice, my private secretary would have been present at the meeting, and he told Mr Dickens, that was it, who was holding the documents, I told Mr Dickens that I would ensure that the papers were looked at carefully by the Home Office and acted on as necessary.
So you say you get a dossier which is about horrific abuse of youngsters by adults connected in with Westminster.
Yeah.
You say that you're going to ensure that you're going to look into the ramifications very carefully. You hand over the dossier. You don't keep a copy. You hand over the dossier. And then because nobody comes back to you over the serious matter of the abuse of children by adults connected to the establishment and politics, I just forgot about it. That's why I'm an MP, because when people come to me talking about child abuse, I've got so much to do, I forget about it.
Yeah, and so I hand it to people, and because they haven't come back to me, I don't remember anyone coming back and saying I should look into this. But it still does not explain where that dossier is now. And I actually phoned the Home Office this morning to ask where that dossier went to. And apparently a press statement is being written at the moment. So hopefully I'll have that for you tomorrow.
Being written in a bit of a panic, presumably.
Yeah. Well, Meredith is saying in the chat box at the BBC is now saying that the dossier is lost.
Oh, that's amazing. That's a bit like the Cook Report tapes that suddenly went missing.
Well, I think there was a bit of a fire there as well.
There was a fire there.
This is known as coincidences.
There's no such thing as coincidence. Can I just bring up these next slides, because here is Simon Danczak, and here is the gentleman who first of all brought it to the attention of Mr Brittan, and his name is Geoffrey Dickens. Now, interestingly, Geoffrey Dickens died back in the 90s, and apparently his family had a copy of the dossier, and his son is reportedly saying that his mother decided to destroy the dossier because she didn't want such sensitive information being kept in the family home. And apparently, I think about a year later, she then passed away. But fair play on Simon Danczak for keep pushing this and not giving up on this issue.
Well,
so
absolutely.
Hats off to him.
If we show the second one you've got here, because this is an important reaction of MPs.
Yeah, poor little things. They're feeling bullied. Then apparently they're being bullied into signing the petition that that's demanding an inquiry into the Westminster paedophile ring. 120 MPs have already signed it, but Mark Reckless, who is a Tory MP, has come out and said that some MPs were fearful that if they did not sign, they would be accused of being a sexual abuse denier. He doesn't say that they might actually be involved in that. They might be accused of being involved in the abuse. He's saying that they might be a child abuse denier.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
Interesting the wording on it.
Somebody should be frightened of signing a movement to say that we should actually go to protect children and we should investigate adults abusing children, particularly if those adults happen to be involved in running the country and Parliament in particular.
Surely if there's an investigation, then that would clear up any problems of being a denier or not being a denier. My thoughts only is those that are fearful may be a bit scared they might be exposed to something, maybe.
Well, possibly. And of course, Mr Cameron has been pretty quiet on this issue, but no surprises here due to this man, I think.
Yeah, so Cameron's friend and aide has finally been officially charged over child abuse images. Patrick Rock was first arrested back in February. He was head of policy and a close friend of Cameron's. He has been charged with 3 counts of making indecent photographs of children and 59 indecent images of children. And amazingly, Brian, I don't know what your thoughts are, he's actually been let out on bail. And he's due to appear in court tomorrow, but he has been let out on bail. And this was back in 27th of June, so he'd have been let out on bail for a minimum of a week. Well, about a week. He's been let out on bail.
I think this is appropriate, because if you're connected to abusive images, or you've... of course, we've got to wait for this process to go through trial. So we're speaking generally that if you've been involved in child abuse, it's only appropriate you should get bail, because, of course, the people we need to make sure are locked up and don't get bail are the people trying to protect the children. So there is a logic to this. We see the British government at the moment actively working, at present under the hand of David Cameron, to cover up child abuse and to protect the people perpetrating at high level, if they're involved in politics, if they're involved in the Conservative Party, if they're involved in the establishment. So this is the same David Cameron's government that's dictating how Libya should run the country.
Yes.
Or we're saying, well, you Ukrainians need to do as we the British say. David Cameron dictating to the world, what does he do at home? He's helping to protect paedophiles. And I'm very happy to say that. So we get clues as to what's going on. Pretty blank slide here, but very, very important. If you just Google this, the Kinsey Institute Exposed, you'll find a very comprehensive document warning about what Kinsey has been up to with regard to sex education and over-sexualising children. And of course, what we've now got is the UN promoting these very policies. And this is the policies that you've been talking about, Louise, over-sexualisation of children. UN policy being driven directly into UK schools, for example, and this is coming from the UN. And who is the gentleman who's been given the job of children and education with the UN? Well, it's none other than our very own Mr. Gordon Brown. So, fascinating stuff. You can have a look at it yourself. Just put in that title, The Kinsey Institute Exposed, and you can download a very comprehensive PDF. And, well, you did it for me there, because here's Robert Greene. What can we tell you? Well, of course, he spent his time in prison. He's now 42 days under house arrest. Has this man been connected with Elm House or any of the paedophile scandals? No. What is this man's crime? Well, he's simply been working, trying to protect children from paedophiles in the establishment. Wouldn't it be extraordinary if there was a connection between the recent ATVOD attack on the UK column and the fact that UK column has steadfastly been working to expose the terrible abuse of Down syndrome girl Holly Gregg. And of course, we've stuck solidly by Robert Greene, as this very brave man has endured 2 bouts in prison, trying simply to get Alex Salmond's Scottish government to investigate allegations of child abuse, and to get Police Scotland under Sir Stephen House to simply do their job. But he's been in prison. Meanwhile, I think anybody associated with David Cameron or the government should be out on bail as soon as possible.
Yeah, indeed.
It's only fair. Oh, sorry, we just missed one. Yeah. What's going on here? Be with you.
Brian getting techie is not good.
No,
I think it's Mike's stories anyway. Mike,
there we go.
Drugs.
Drugs. So we've got a massive campaign started now to legalise drugs. Now this Economist article, let's remember what the Economist is. It's the mouthpiece for the City of London. They're really making the point that decriminalisation for possession is not enough. We've got to go ahead and legalise just about everything. And I think really bearing in mind who this organisation, The Economist, speaks for, we need to start asking ourselves, why would they be calling for this? Of course, last week we had 90 celebrities calling for the same thing. And we also had prison chiefs and the police backing the celebrities' stars call for the same thing. So again, we've got to ask why would they be doing? Why would the police and prison chiefs be asking for this? And just a few days before that, if not the day before, we had the former UK ambassador to Afghanistan calling for exactly the same thing. This was William Patey. He was ambassador to Afghanistan until 2012, and he said that heroin should be legalised because Britain has lost the fight on opium production in Afghanistan. Now, as I say, he was British ambassador to Afghanistan 2010 to 2012. He's a career diplomat, Foreign and Commonwealth Office, joined the Foreign and Commonwealth Office in 1975. And in that article in The Guardian, he wrote that Tony Blair deployed troops to Afghanistan, ending the illicit production and supply of opium, which was cited at the time as a key objective. So he's claiming that Tony Blair ended opium production. Okay. So anyway, as I say, setting aside personal views on the legalization of certain drugs, we're talking about here the legalization of all drugs. And we've got to ask ourselves why the British establishment seems to be moving to change the policy on this. And just ask ourselves, is it in our interests? So we mentioned opium production in Afghanistan because, of course, Tony Blair went there to stop that. And, well, this graph says it all because there's 2001. That was the year that we invaded. And why did we invade? We invaded to kick out the Taliban. So we invaded, was it October that year, I believe?
Yeah.
So after the harvest. And the harvest in 2001 was the lowest that it had been for a long time. And lo and behold, the following harvest after Tony Blair invaded Afghanistan, we were right back up to pre-2001, pre-Taliban levels. And opium production has been increasing ever since. And in fact, this I think is a more stark graph because it shows the dark orange bars are the Afghani opium production, and the other bars are for other countries and the rest of the world. And we can see that the proportion of opium and heroin on the streets has been mainly coming from Afghanistan, while prior to the 2001 invasion of Afghanistan, there was a larger proportion coming from other countries. Now, so Afghanistan has become the main provider of heroin on the planet, and we need to say that is mostly from Helmand province, and mostly under the watchful gaze of the British Army, unfortunately. So no matter what your personal view is on the issue, we need to ask ourselves why the British establishment wishes to legalise drugs at this time. Could it be that hiding the flow of drug money, as a form of propping up the financial system is becoming a lot harder? Could it be that they need the tax dollars? I think that's probably part of it as well. But I think it's also because they want to encourage a greater population onto hard drugs. And I'll just make this final point on this. We have now started, if we've reported this on this programme before, we have now started growing opium in this country because the NHS cannot find a supply of opiates for pain relief. And yet we have Afghanistan, which we are mainly in control of, the largest province which is producing this opium, and we cannot buy from the farmers in a legitimate way. Instead, all the Afghani opium is going onto into illegal heroin trafficking, and this has clearly got to change. But legalization, they're just attempting to raise tax dollars here, it seems to me.
Yeah, the statistics say it all, don't they, really? Somebody needs to regulate against this, actually, Mike.
Possibly.
Yeah, superbugs.
Superbugs. David Cameron has said antibiotic-resistant bugs will send the world back to the dark ages, so the UK will lead a global effort to develop new, stronger drugs to battle the biggest health threat facing the world today. So, who does Mr. Cameron get to look into this and do some investigations? Well, believe it or not, it's Jim O'Neill, and he's former ex-chief economist at Goldman Sachs. So I'm just a little bit confused as to what sort of CV and experience this chief economist has on superbugs.
Has he got any medical experience?
No medical experience at all. But he's the man that Cameron has decided to choose to investigate.
Well, clearly he would be, but clearly he would be looking at the economic implications of a pandemic.
Right. So, well, we can't get a banker to investigate the child abuse in UK, of course. That would be, I don't know, Coles to Newcastle, maybe. So
staying
Ebola.
on bugs, Ebola. Deadly Ebola virus seems to be spreading now rapidly through West Africa, and health workers have finally now put out a plea for urgent international help to control the virus. So far, over 400 have died in this latest outbreak, and there is not much sign of the disease being halted anytime soon. So Sierra Leone and that part of West Africa is literally rampant. It's flying through it everywhere, and they need help desperately out there.
These poor people just continually suffering as a result of the policy implemented by us, the West.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this just gets better with regards to bugs. So Cameron's saying that there aren't enough antibiotics, they're not resistant enough. But hey-ho, a scientist has recreated and replicated a resilient strain of virus H1N1. And the professor of virology, Dr. Kawioka, has reportedly tweaked the 2009 pandemic flu virus, which was responsible for many deaths. And Dr. Kawioka's aim is to convert the virus into its pre-pandemic state to find out how it has changed over the years so he can design a vaccine for the future. But many critics have now come out and said about the experiment, saying if the virus was to escape his laboratory, the human race would be completely defenceless against it, as no vaccine, no antibiotic will touch this new strain that this Dr. Death has developed in his laboratory. So we have Cameron there saying about the antibiotics, there's a need. We have this terrible virus going on in Africa, killing so many people, children, and now we have a scientist let free in a lab to go and recreate another superbug. No sense.
Well, no common sense. And of course, the aim of the other side is not to have common sense. This is why I'm quite encouraged. If people say, well, how do we deal with this? We just need to get people, don't need to be super intelligent people, but people with intelligence and common sense. The common sense is the key bit. Country could be sorted out in a couple of weeks.
And people start empowering themselves, like Clive's products, any products, just start getting the good stuff into you and stay away from the antibiotics until it's vitally necessary.
Yeah, well, we've been warning about the BBC. We'll leave Jimmy Savile aside, but the key factor that is coming to the surface by the day is the fact that the BBC is not just a bit of a propaganda machine. This is a very professional £4.8 billion worth of propaganda machine. And we've posted an article about BBC Media Action. Remember, this is the BBC charity that nobody's ever heard of. They've been in the press recently on the subject of educating people in Asia about global warming, make sure that they've got the BBC's view on what global warming is. But in our article, which we're going to encourage people to read, we're giving the real details about this charity Media Action and the fact that it has been at work in virtually every unstable, violent country and situation that we've seen over recent years. So in Iraq, in Syria, in Libya, in the Ukraine, in Somalia, in Kenya. This little organisation has been in everywhere. And we're saying it's just a coincidence that everywhere the BBC Media Action installs itself, we start to see breakdown, civil unrest, and in many cases leading to full-blown civil war. Well, if that was of interest, thank you very much for the viewer that flagged this one up. A little backbenchers debate going on Parliament with a lady called Fiona Bruce.
Did we find out, was it the BBC's view?
No,
it's not. Okay.
This is a member of Parliament. We just read you a little bit of what she says. I do, and in answer to the honourable gentleman's question that I referred to earlier, one way we can also provide support is through some of the organisations that go into North Korea. Many of them are Christian organisations such as Open Doors or Christian Solidarity Worldwide. The Commission heard from Amnesty International in a witness session that support for them by means of food aid will get through to people in North Korea. There are means of reaching North Koreans, and those organisations are providing tremendous strength and support for people in North Korea. as they travel about and provide aid and information. So what this is about is that we've got backbenchers who are desperately concerned that there's a very nasty situation going on in North Korea. But actually stay with it, because what we're actually saying here is that basically we should be doing things to help the North Koreans. I'm not being cynical here. I entirely agree that lives are lived in permanent fear. Even before they can read or write, children are taught to fear and worship the regime. That is a terrible mixture in people's mindset. So this lady's talking about North Korea. We think there's some similarities with life in the United Kingdom at the moment. But what do they say? Well, what we need to do is we need to get the BBC into North Korea in order to help these people, give them the truth, show them what they should really be aiming at. And I just find this hypocrisy incredible. Here we are under the BBC strategy, delivering creative future in global news. A priority for the World Service is to access states overseas. And the debate went on a little bit more, and up popped the name of my favourite MP, Gary Streeter. This is the man, of course, who was banging the table to get us bombing Syria. Let's get the weapons into Syria. And what's the significance here? Well, Mr. Streeter, you've been extremely indulgent by saying that if the BBC persists in being unwilling to broadcast into Korea, a solution will be found elsewhere. And what we're going to do, we're going to set up an independent radio station broadcasting from the UK into North Korea. Yeah. Unless they're regulated, of course.
Get ATVOD to them.
It's pretty phenomenal, really. Well, I'll just give you this one, which we've also been told about. I should have the full website, but what we're talking about is television for the armed forces. And it now appears that the government is so concerned about serving personnel, particularly those overseas in Afghanistan, for instance, receiving live broadcasts from organisations trying to tell the truth, that they seem to be setting up a complete armed forces television network which will only contain the very best in programming. So you might like to have a look at the website. You'll find this pretty quickly if you just Google Armed Forces TV and do have a look at the charity behind it. So talking of armed forces, it probably brings us very nicely to wars overseas and Obama, I should think.
In fact, it's really your comment about arming the Syrian opposition, because Barack Obama intends to spend $500 million on the Syrian opposition, arming them and providing them with training. And a number of people are commenting about this in the United States. So here we've got, before we say this, we have been reporting that the US Congress is really pretty apoplectic at the moment about the fact that Obama is behaving more like a dictator every day. He's making executive decisions about going to war, which he says he doesn't need to ask for permission from Congress about, but merely needs to inform them of his dictatorial decisions. So this is Congressman Walter Jones, who's been also calling for Glass-Steagall banking reform. And he wrote a piece here in which he concluded, most importantly, any time our military is involved in training foreign fighters in a hostile environment, the chances are that US lives will be lost and that the situation may escalate. As Commander-in-Chief, the President should understand that we cannot risk spilling further American blood in yet another unnecessary foreign intervention. For each of these reasons, I stand in firm opposition to congressional authorization of the $500 million in aid. I call on my fellow members of the House and the Senate, and so on. So he had that to say. But another person also commenting on this was Pat Buchanan, and we may not like Pat Buchanan too much, but actually he's one of the few people that has openly commented on this, and he said both houses should demand that Obama explain exactly where he gets the constitutional authority to plunge us into what the president himself calls someone else's civil war. And he goes on to say it's astonishing that Republicans who threaten to impeach Obama for usurping authority at home remains silent as he prepares to usurp their war powers to march us into Syria and back again in Iraq. And I would just remind everybody that 3 or 4 months ago, Patrick Henningsen did warn us all that sometime in the summer there was likely to be an escalation of the situation in Syria, and that the US and British governments were likely to pull something else. They may feel that that time has passed, sufficient time has passed from the point where they lost consent to go to war in Syria before, that they're going to have another go. It's up to us to stop that from happening, just like the last time.
Yeah. Did you know Obama's apparently up for another Nobel Peace Prize? Did you know that? Yeah, he's up for another. It's just crazy, isn't it?
I was going to say something, it's gone straight out of my head, actually. Oh, well, of course, yes. The food banks in America, many people in the States can't feed themselves. They're living out of tents and caravans. But if you need to get more weapons, explosives into a country, all of a sudden $500 million created out of nothing, presumably by the international bankers. It's amazing.
It is. Oh, no. Okay, you do that and then I'll...
Yeah, we're having a little bit of an intermission in this programme today. We're going to end by saying thank you very, very much to all of those who have donated over the years, and particularly those who do so quietly. We do get donations from people that never come with a name or address, so we don't know who you are, but we're going to say thank you very much if you are kind enough to send a donation to us. And we know we can't do without you. And we do appreciate your generosity. So this is really a big thank you to everybody who donates or takes a subscription for the column, but particularly for the people who have done over many years, and we have no idea who you are. And somebody sent us this very nice little handmade card, which is on the right-hand side of the screen there.
Yeah, because we've never done big fundraising campaigns, and it's just been the three of us in this little office, and we do what we do, and we just depend on our subscribers to the ukcolumn.org. So if you'd like us to continue what we're doing, please tell your friends and ask them to subscribe to the ukcolumn.org.
Okay. We're going to end there because the temperature in the studio is now about 120 degrees.
Can we just not finish yet? People in the chat room, Mike, are asking, if it's not too TV-like, to ask what time the live stream replays this. Is that allowed to be asked?
That would be too TV-like.
Oh, too TV-like. Yeah. Okay.
Because that would turn us into providing a linear
so
linear
people
schedule.
People are just going to guess when it's on, when it's repeated.
No. Look, obviously, yesterday's exercise didn't go quite to plan because for some reason people, first of all, the download was extremely slow. Maybe that was because of the number of people trying to download it, but also I think there was a bit of corruption or something. I mean, we played the same video out subsequently yesterday afternoon and didn't have any problem, but people were having problems with the download. So I'll do something else again about it this afternoon, and we'll let people know in the forums later on.
Will it be on the live stream later on today? It will be at some point.
Yes. Right.
At some point. But we are on iTunes as well. So if anyone wants to download,
that's audio only though.
Audio only,
yes.
Yeah. You can go to iTunes, put in the UK column, and you will find it to listen to. And then you'll just have to sit and watch the live stream and wait for it to pop up. And then hopefully it may be on the same time.
We will get this formalised in the next couple of days. So just
be patient.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, it's even hotter in the studio now, so we're going to go. Thank you for joining us, and I'm going to tell you Louise is now off to the beach. So thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.